name is Scott Steffen. I'm the Director of Safety and Compliance here at Melton Truck Lines. Today we're going to talk about logs. As the DOT takes logbooks very seriously, so does Melton. Melton runs legal logbooks, and we have a low tolerance for drivers that do not run legal logbooks or keep their logbooks up to DOT standards. One of the quickest ways for a driver to get written up on a roadside inspection is to have messy logbooks. If the DOT officer cannot read your logbook, read the city or state where you're at, doesn't know which line you're in, can't read your name, can't read the mileage or the shipper or the commodity, it's automatically going to throw him into a bad mood, and he's going to find something wrong with your logbook. Messy logs in itself is a DOT violation. If he can't read it, he's going to write you up. Logbooks should be taken very seriously. Therefore, you should take your time when filling out your logbooks. Make sure they're complete, concise, and legible. Make sure you complete your recap daily, and make sure that you're using a calculator and a ruler. If you do not use a ruler, sometimes you don't know which line, which 15-minute increment you're on, and you could accidentally add up your 11, 14, or 70 wrong, causing violations. If you do not do your recap properly using a calculator, your addition can be wrong, and one 70-hour violation can snowball into 7 or 8 very quickly. So make sure that you're using a calculator, making sure that you can read your own writing and know where you're at each point in the day.
The number one reason that drivers are cited on roadside inspections or put out of service is that their duty status is not current. And this is unacceptable because a driver should pick up his logbook each and every time he stops that vehicle and update his logbook. The only reason that your logbook would not be updated is if you just got lazy with it. And you can't afford that, and Melton Truck Lines cannot afford that. So every change of duty status, you're going to make an update in your logbook. A good example of a DOT violation that we have been seeing is a driver going from sleeper berth to the drive line, but not drawing the line down from the sleeper berth to the drive line and just taking off driving. Well, this is constitutes a duty status not current because you didn't draw your line. So you got to pay attention to detail, and you'll hear me say throughout this CD that you got to dot your I's and you got to cross your T's. You don't want to get dinged by something silly. Regarding DOT duty status, you are required to do a load check, tire check every 3 hours or 150 miles. Therefore, your logbook should never be more than 3 hours behind. Keep your logs current and make your logs easy for the DOT. It will make your life a lot easier. Next, we have an example of what not to have your log look like. If I was a roadside inspector and I saw this, I would not even try to decipher what is going on here. I would simply write him up for form and manner violations. If you notice the total miles is not filled in, you'll notice the letters in his name go from capitals to lowercase. You can't read the cities and states and what he's doing at each of those locations. And you can see that he's adding up his lines and writing numbers out to the side. And he was trying to get his math right, and I can appreciate this, but it messes up the log so bad, makes it so busy that, again, a DOT officer is not going to spend his time looking at this. He's simply going to write you up and send you on down the road. This is an example of a good log. You'll notice that he is using all uppercase letters. He's filled in his total miles. Every blank that he has information for is filled in, including his trip number, his shipper, commodity, the entire home terminal address. He's signed it, signed his name, printed his name, got his tractor and trailer number, his recap is done. You can read every line. You can read every flag. This is what we expect your logbooks to look like. And everybody's logs can look like this if you take your time. At the bottom of your paper log, you'll notice your DVIR, Driver's Post-Trip Vehicle Inspection Report. This is required at the end of every day. You're simply going to sign this and make sure that there's no obvious defects, obviously, in your post-trip inspection, but you'll sign this at the end of every day. And speaking of your post-trip inspection, this is at the time you give me 15 minutes in line 4. Melton Truck Lines has a GPS-based tracking system that alerts me and my department when any hours of service rules have been exceeded. For instance, if you took a 9-hour break and then kept rolling, I would have an alert that you are exceeding your hours of service violation, and you'll immediately get a phone call and a shutdown from me. So make sure that you're taking full, solid 10-hour breaks. Your Qualcomm knows exactly where you are and exactly what time you're there. It also knows exactly how fast you're going and how far you're going. We set these alerts up to make sure that we don't have any drivers out there breaking their hours of service rules, because we all know the consequences of an accident, and if you're in violation of your logs or have falsified your logbook, it could mean jail time for you. We also track logs through our clearing process. When you come through Tulsa or Laredo, you're required to bring in your logbook and present it to us, where we take your logbook and we match it to your movement history on Qualcomm just to keep everybody honest, make sure that you're not falsifying your logbooks. So please understand, we're not talking at the side of our mouth. We do these checks and we do them regularly. I don't want anybody to leave orientation thinking that they can get away with falsifying their logbooks. It just will not happen at Melton Truck Lines. And unfortunately, if the driver decides to falsify his logbooks, we will have to terminate that driver. It is just not tolerated at Melton Truck Lines. Compliance with hours of service regulations is critical to everyone's success, both the driver and Melton. We intend to be in business a long time, and we will not allow a driver to jeopardize that. If you have questions on the road regarding your logs, you can always look in your FMCSR section 395. There's interpretations in there and basic hours of service rules that can answer any of your questions. However, you can obviously call the safety department if you have questions as well. All of our logs are kept in Central Time. Make sure that you are not using your cell phone to see what time it is, because the cell phone changes as you go through time zones. You need to have one standard clock set to Central Time all the time, and this is the clock you use to keep your logs. Fuel stops must be logged at the time your ComData card is swiped. We allow a 15-minute window on either side of the time your card is swiped. The biggest problem that drivers tend to have is they swipe their card and they fuel, and then they go into the truck stop and eat or take a shower, and then they forget what time they swiped the card, and so they're going to create a false log for an inaccurate fuel stop. What I suggest is that when you swipe the card, just take your pen and write it on a piece of paper or write it on your hand, and when you're done fueling, you can get back in your truck and immediately log that fuel time. And remember, you have to give me 15 minutes in line 4 when you fuel. You cannot be on duty, you cannot be off duty, in the sleeper berth, or driving and fueling at the same time, obviously. So make sure you go down to line 4, give me 15 minutes. Like I said earlier, make sure you're logging a post-trip 15 minutes. This is when you sign your DVR. You need to flag your pre-trip. You don't have to give me time, but you need to flag it. Like I said previously, we require load check tire checks the first 50 miles, or every hour, or 150 miles or 3 hours after that. So your duty status will always be less than 3 hours old. Logs must be current to last change of duty status. Logs are sent in at the end of each trip. Do not hold on to your logs. You need to take your white pages and send them in at the end of each trip in a trip pack. Melton Truck Lines does not allow split logging. We require full 10-hour breaks. Split logging, when the hours of service rules changed, did not become advantageous, and it is very confusing to drivers, and more times than not the driver will get themselves in a bind not fully understanding how to split log. Therefore, there are no split logs allowed at Melton Truck Lines. Also, loose leaf logs are not allowed. Keep the staples in your logbook. The only thing that should be torn out of your logbook is the white pages when you send them in. If you have an error on a log, you can void the log out. Just write void across and go to the next page. Make sure you have plenty of logbooks with you. Generic logbooks are not legible, and our scanner cannot read them. So if you have to go to a generic logbook, you will have to transpose all that information into our logbook before they can be scanned, and therefore you'll come up with missing logs. So just make sure you have enough logbooks. All city names must be spelled out, no abbreviations. For example, NYC, NY is not acceptable. You have to spell out New York City, New York. I know this seems trivial, but it is an hours of service violation, a form and manner violation to be more specific. Melton Truck Lines requires a break every 20-minute break every 5 hours of driving. We do this for your health, basically. It's not good to sit and drive for long periods of time without getting up and getting that circulation back in your legs. All that blood pooling in your lower body is not good. So make sure you're taking your breaks, and driving, straight line driving for 8 or 9 hours, it's unacceptable according to the DOT and Melton. Again, logs will be checked every time you enter a terminal. Make sure that you have your last today and your last 7 days on your logs at all times. Make sure that you date your logs correctly. If you misdate a log and an officer wants to get picky, he can put you out of service for not retaining your previous 7 days. And again, log it as you drive it. There is no tolerance for false logs at Melton Truck Lines. Right now, we're going to look at a blank log and fill it in how it's supposed to be done correctly. First of all, you'll notice driver code, SMIJ, all in capital letters. Second, the date. This is March 30th, 2011. And this is the form it's supposed to be in. Next, your tractor number, 7466. Your trailer number, 8501. Your name legibly printed. Your trip number, the shipper, and commodity, 123456. Shipper's in EMJ, and your commodity is steel pipe. You don't have a co-driver, so not applicable. You'll notice on the recap it's filling in legible numbers, accurate numbers, and we're going to total those up. That equals 39, and those numbers totaled up, taken from 70, gives me what I have available today, which is 31 hours. If you do not know how to do a recap, you will not be successful at Melton Truck Lines, and it can get you in a lot of trouble with the DOT. Make sure that you understand this recap. Ask your orientation supervisor or ask the training department to help you if you have a question. You are not going to get in trouble for asking questions. Here we've come into the sleeper berth for the first 6 hours of the day. You can notice my lines neatly drawn through the graph. I go down to drive line. You'll notice the blue arrow, that is the start of my 14-hour clock. As soon as you go down to line 3 and 4, your 14-hour clock starts. which means 14 hours later is 8 o'clock at night. I cannot drive past 8 o'clock at night, no matter what. Even if I've only got 3 or 4 hours of driving in during that frame, it doesn't matter. I cannot drive past my 14th hour on duty. You are allowed 11 hours of drive time within, very important you understand that, within a 14-hour window. When I went down to my drive line, I did my PTI, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Notice I don't give time in line 4 for this. I just flag it, and then I physically go do my PTI. Then I drive a little bit, and I stop and do a load check, tire check, Springfield, Missouri. Drive some more, then I go off duty. Lines are nice and neat within the graph. I do load check, tire check, and lunch in St. Louis, Missouri. And I go back down to the drive line, drive a little bit longer, do my next required load check, tire check. Notice I'm spelling out the name of the city. It's all legible. Keep driving to 6. Decide, well, I better find a truck stop because I'm over up in the northeast and they may be hard to find, so I'm going to shut it down a little bit early. I do my post-trip inspection. I'm off duty in Greencastle, Indiana. I go back up to off duty and draw my line for 2 hours. Then I go back into sleeper berth for 8 hours. This is an example of a perfect log. Now, at the end of the day, I'm going to total my hours on the right. I'm going to make sure, double and triple check that I'm adding my graphs correctly so I'm not creating a snowball effect with the wrong information. I'm going to put in the 24 hours, which obviously there's 24 hours in a day. All your numbers and your total hours should equal 24. If not, go back and redo your math. You've made an error. I'm going to put in my total miles for the day, 622. You'll see there at the top. I'm going to sign my logbook, and my home terminal address is all filled in, which should actually just be done before you start driving. But notice it's the whole address, 808 North 161st East Avenue.
When you were brought in, you were expected to know how to keep a logbook. You were professional drivers, and regardless of your time on the road, you were taught the hours of service rules and regulations. However, if you have any questions or doubt that you can log 100% accurately, please come and see us before you get on the road. We would rather counsel you and teach you what you need to know before a DOT roadside inspector writes you up or gets you a ticket for it. Thank you for your time, and as always, call Safety Compliance anytime you have any questions. Thank you.